Salty commander cards are those that tend to frustrate or annoy opponents, leading to negative reactions or salt. These cards often disrupt the game in ways that some players find unfun or oppressive. Here are some of the saltiest commander cards and reasons why they provoke such strong reactions. First on the list, Stasis. The effect, players skip their untap steps. Why is it salty? Stasis basically locks down the game, preventing players from untapping their lands, creatures, and other permanents. This can make the game grind to a halt, forcing players to either wait for a solution or scoop out of frustration. What are your thoughts?
So a lot of these effects, which not all of them are listed in any type of particular order, but whenever you have an effect in Magic, especially Commander, which is a very subjective format we like to play, right?
Yeah.
We like to quantify what we control as fun, and we tend to play with those who have a similar barometer for the same type of fun we enjoy. Stasis and a lot of the other cards on the list are going to replicate a similar theme, which is you can't do this thing. You can't have fun, James. It's not allowed.
No soup for you!
No fun allowed. Stasis, you skip your untap steps. You don't untap your lands. You don't untap your permanents. It's just not fun. I put these cards in my deck so I could tap and untap them. That's part of the joy.
Yeah.
part of the joy is the gathering, so we can untap and tap our pieces of cardboard on the table.
Right?
And Stasis says, but you can.
Yeah, we pay lots of money to untap these pieces of cardboard.
Right. They're effectively paperweights, which is comical.
So, Stasis, thinking about the concept that it makes you pretty much not have the ability to untap anything, let's go into the second one on the list. Winter Orb. The effect, players can only tap one land during their untap step. Why that's salty? Similar to Stasis, Winter Orb severely restricts the resources available to players, dragging the game out and preventing them from executing their strategies. It's particularly brutal when combined with cards that allow you to untap your own lands, but not your opponent's.
Again, Winter Orb falls in the same vein of... Really, Winter Orb likes to actually play the semantic game, right? You can untap lands. The word can't's not on there.
True.
Or the word skip is not on there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you can untap one land.
But one.
These people who play these cards act like it's a privilege, too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm letting you have the ability to untap one land. You should be thankful, right? It's like, well, I have 12 in play. It's turn 5, right? Or what are we doing? These both lend themselves to strategies that if you're not prepared to play against them, it's even worse, right? The Urza players play Winter Orb because they're like, well, I'm going to tap it for mana with my Urza, and who cares about lands? I have a bunch of artifacts, so they're going to do things for me anyway, right? And that's sort of the other side of the salt, right? Yep. It's like, I wasn't planning on playing against Winter Orb, but this is, but the Urza player was. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
So now it's an even more egregious gap between resources, right?
Yep. Well, on the concept of resources, let's talk about the next one. Armageddon. Just destroy all lands. Why it's salty? Land destruction is universally despised in Commander, as it sets everyone back to the Stone Age and often leads to the game ending in a slow, agonizing manner. Armageddon is especially infuriating when played from a position of advantage.
As a Boomer Magic player, I've been playing for a long time, I appreciate some land destruction from time to time in the appropriate amounts and in appropriate situations. The big thing with Armageddon, much like Winter Orb and Stasis, is the game takes forever. The game just drags on.
4 hours later.
And on. And like you said, it's even worse when not everyone's at parity, right? If I have some effect that lets me keep my lands or play extra lands and I Armageddon, right? And then it's just, it leans back to that same widening gap up between the haves and have-nots, right?
Yep.
I'm the Jeff Bezos over here with all my lands and everything else, and you're just everybody else living in the...
Go, peon, go!
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Next on the list is Expropriate. Each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, you take an extra turn. For each money vote, you steal a permanent. Salt, Expropriate can single-handedly swing a game in your favor, either by giving you multiple extra turns or by stealing the best permanents on the board. The card often feels like an unavoidable loss for opponents.
Expropriate. My favorite card. I'm totally have my air quotes up, and I love everything about this. Expropriate to me is not as backbreaking, maybe, as the first three on the list.
True.
The problem with Expropriate is it really stresses and tests what I said earlier about the barometer of fun. What I quantify as fun might be quantified differently for you. And when we sit down and play this game, there's sort of that psychological dynamic between everyone in the pod.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it leads to a lot of chaos and discord or aggressive politicking, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are greedy and they don't want to give up their best permanent. So just give them the extra turn.
Yeah.
And the value of taking a whole nother turn. You want to talk about resources, right?
Right.
The value of giving someone a whole extra turn on top of the one they're most definitely giving themselves.
You just got 3 more card draws, 3 more potential for landfall, 3 more potentials for triggers. It's just over.
It's again, in a deck that's designed to use the most out of Expropriate, right? It just feels even worse.
Yeah, I do not disagree. So next up on the list is Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger. Doubles your mana, but makes your opponent's lands enter the battlefield tapped and not untapped during their next untap step. Vorinclex ramps you significantly while crippling your opponent's mana bases, which can make it nearly impossible for them to catch up. The one-sided nature of the effect leads to a lot of frustration. Thoughts?
Yeah, Vorinclex is definitely takes the adage of I just don't have to outrun the bear, I have to outrun you. After you've like whacked that person in the kneecap, you know what I mean? Like it's such an unnecessary level of I need to make sure it's very draconian, right?
Okay.
Very harsh and almost barbaric, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna make sure that you can't have fun or
use of excessive force.
Yes,
How about that?
Yes. It often feels that way. And it doesn't help that it's also stapled to like whatever Vorinclex, a 7/7 or something stupid, right? Yeah. It's not like it's a fast death in a game where everyone has 40 life. It's like, goodness, like what are we doing?
So next up on the list is something you usually see in most people's decks if they play it right: Cyclonic Rift. Returns all non-land permanents to your opponent's control to their owner's hands when overloaded. Cyclonic Rift often feels like an I win button when overloaded, resetting the board for everyone else while leaving the caster in a dominant position. The card is often played at the end of an opponent's turn, leaving them with little opportunity to respond.
Alright, so this is a hot take.
I agree.
This is a hot take for everyone here at the Mana League. I don't think Cyclonic Rift is that bad.
I don't either. I like it.
I think Cyclonic Rift has the most opportunity to exaggerate the effect it has when these effects are used at the wrong time. I love a Cyclonic Rift when I rift your board and I untap and I kill you over the course of the next 2 turns. I hate Cyclonic Rift when it's an Armageddon style effect that drags the game out for 4 years.
Correct.
That is where my problem with Cyclonic Rift lies. Not so much that it is a very efficient and powerful spell, but I when it's used appropriately, that's great.
Yeah.
Right? When you Armageddon me and you have the best board in play with 30 trampling, whatever, or angels or something, and sure, right? Armageddon, swing over the course of the next 2 turns, sure, that's fine. Cyclonic Rift, same thing. When it happens and then the game takes another 2 hours, that's when it's like salt.
Yeah, agreed.
Peak salt.
Agreed. I don't want to have to have a game take 4 hours long. I'd rather be able to get up and have another game within that 2 hour time span. I agree with
Most people would, yeah.
All right, so the next one on the list, luckily, can't play in Commander anymore. Hullbreacher. Opponents can't draw more than 1 card each turn, and instead of drawing extra cards, you create treasure tokens. Salty, Hullbreacher shuts down card draw, one of the most important aspects of Commander, while also giving the controller a huge advantage in the form of treasures. The card was banned due to how oppressive and unfun it was to play against.
So Hullbreacher was put on a list so that I could stand on my soapbox.
Okay.
This is the next 2 cards in tandem with one another, sort of belong in the same category of if this effect is deemed too salty, too egregious to play against, unfun, however you want to quantify it, right? Then I want all of them gone. And I know that seems, I don't want to say not fair or perhaps maybe too heavy-handed in one way.
Okay.
But there are some cards that are banned, similar to Hullbreacher, and some effects that are not banned. Now, Hullbreacher ramping you and giving you treasures, I think, was really like what pushed it over the mark as far as like power
too
creep
much.
is concerned.
It had too much.
Right. And which is why it was banned.
Yeah.
But the philosophy that Wizards given us as to why these things are not allowed and we can't have them anymore, it's like, well, if that's the philosophy we're using, just get rid of all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just, you might as well...
Every one of these cards in this list invokes some kind of emotion. At that point, they should all be gone.
Yeah, cut all the heads off. Don't... Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So next up on the list is Narset. Parter of Veils. Each opponent can't draw more than one card each turn. Sounds pretty familiar. Narset similarly limits opponents' ability to draw cards, which can be devastating in a format that relies heavily on card advantage. It's often combined with wheels, like Wheel of Fortune, which make it even more oppressive.
Yeah, Narset and Hullbreacher are in the same vein of this effect of you can't do something, which we've already quantified as being not fun, stapled with a card advantage or ramping with treasures from Hullbreacher, right? Like, not only can you not do this, but I'm going to do this thing even more now, or better than you, right? Yep. Same thing with the Vorinclex. You have that disparity between the haves and have-nots, as I like to say, right? I can have the cards with Narset, I can have the treasures with Hullbreacher, and you can't have those things. So it just makes them feel even more like, why are they all here, right?
Yeah.
If we've established that this effect is not fun, again, just get rid of all of them.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a trip back down memory lane, but maybe a little bit less harsh. So the next card on the list is Ruination. Destroys all non-basic lands. Ruination punishes players who rely on non-basic lands, which is common in Commander. It can cripple multicolored decks and set players back significantly, often causing frustration, especially if someone has invested in a mana base with expensive non-basics.
Yeah, Ruination is sort of a weird one, because again, I love me some good land destruction when it's appropriate and when it is necessary.
Yeah.
Ruination, I agree. Ruination punishes the player that perhaps has been playing for the longest, has a better collection, or has more resources available to them, right, to have a better, more efficient deck. And Ruination kind of just says, hey, well, destroy all your cool, pretty expensive cards. All you have is basics. Again, it shouldn't be as crippling as Armageddon, right?
Correct.
But again, you build your deck, I'm assuming, in a particular manner to where you can not be affected as much as Ruination.
Unless you're playing a monocolor deck, it's going to do some damage to you.
Right. And even in monocolor decks, it's not, there are plenty of monocolor decks that would not love to get
for any non-basic,
against
of
them.
course.
It's so I definitely get where the level of salt comes from. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's as high as Armageddon, but it's still there.
No.
And the last card on this list is definitely debatable to me, but it's a great card. Opposition Agent. While an opponent is searching their library, you control them and exile a card you find. Why it's salty? Opposition Agent is a hard counter to tutoring, which is a central part of many Commander decks. It not only stops your opponent from getting what they want, but it also gives you control over their search, which can be infuriating.
Opposition Agent is also on the line of I don't want to call it a necessary evil.
Agreed.
But it does feel punishing to the players that have more resources, or they've been playing for a long time, and perhaps they have, I don't want to call these cards better cards, but they do have cards that allow them to search, fetch lands, tutor effects, right? An Opposition Agent kind of says, hey, we're gonna Robin Hood you, right? Punish you for your bags of gold, silly dragon. And it's just kind of like, is that really something we want to be punishing players for, right? We want Demonic Tutor and fetch lands to be more accessible, which then only makes Opposition Agent feel worse. Plus, on top of the added effect of, I get to have your thing. I just take your thing.
Yeah, I just take it.
Right? And it's like, nobody likes having their stuff stolen. That's another peak salty factor, I feel like, in a lot of Commander games.
Agreed.
It's in my deck for a reason. I want to play it.
Yeah. So this is our breakdown of the saltiest cards. They tend to generate salt because they often shut down other player strategies, create highly unbalanced game states, or slow the game down to a crawl. 4-hour games. While they can be powerful tools for winning games, they also have a reputation for creating negative play experiences. That's pretty much it. Hope you guys come back soon. See you soon. This is James and Derek signing off.
Have a good one, guys.